is Katie of KT and the Squid, and this is the start of a new series that I'm calling Help a Fan Out. So I get a lot of questions about crochet and some about knitting and even just yarn in general. I don't always have time to answer all these questions, and a lot of the times these questions don't always have just one right answer or just one solution. So that's why I decided to start this series. Each week, or maybe every other week, depending on how much time I have, I'm gonna post a question to my Facebook page. It's gonna say, Help a Fan Out. And I'm gonna ask for help from you guys to give me what you think is the best answer, or maybe just what you like to do. Last week I posted the first question, and it was basically just a reader asking, what do you do with your gauge swatches? I got a lot of great answers, and they were pretty wide in variety. A lot of people said that they like to unravel the yarn and use it for something else. I don't really think there's anything wrong with it. It's just probably something I wouldn't do. But if you think about it, yarn is yarn, and if that's what you want to do, I think that's perfectly fine. Some people say that they don't keep their gauge swatches, they just throw them out, and nothing wrong with that. Some people say that they like to keep their swatches and they label them and keep them as a reference for later. And then I had one person say that they have never done a gauge swatch. So if that was you, we need to have a little chat. I'm kidding. I had other people say, which I think is a great idea, is they repurpose the gauge swatches into something else. Someone said that they use them for coasters later, and that's fun. And then someone else said that they've used them as a blanket, sewed them together to make blankets. Me personally, I'm kind of an all of the above. So when I start a project, I do my gauge swatch, and then I like to label it. And depending on my mood, I might be more detailed in my labeling, or I might just write what kind of yarn it was and what my gauge was. So some things that you can include on your label would be the yarn, the hook or the needle that you used, and your gauge, maybe the color of the yarn, maybe the pattern that you used it for. There's all kinds of things that you could put on here that would be helpful. This one just says what yarn it was, and then it says the hook I used, and then something I really like to do is I put my gauge, but not only my gauge after blocking, but I put what it was before blocking, because when I'm working my project, I can go back and check just to make sure that I'm on track to where I need to be to keep my gauge the same. Sometimes I like to add how I blocked something. So if I wet blocked it or if I steam blocked it, because sometimes it depends on my mood. I like to keep that so when I'm at the end of my project, I know what I need to do to get the same gauge. To label my yarn, I use these hang tags, and I just found these in the office supplies section of my local store. I think I got these at Walmart or something, but I'm sure you could get them at Target or like an office supply store. And they were really cheap, so I just keep them handy. If you don't have those, you can always take the yarn label from the yarn and just tie it to the string hanging off of your gauge swatch. And then you can write on it whatever information you want to add. So this is a stack of gauge swatches that I saved. When I get to the end of my project, I usually decide if I'm going to save the gauge swatch or if I'm gonna get rid of it. And there can be a lot of factors that I take into account. So if it's a yarn I love and I think I might want to use it for something else, I save it. If it's a yarn that I really have no intentions of using again, it's gone. I don't really see any point in keeping it, so I just toss it. Sometimes I'll give it to my daughter and she'll like to use them as blankets for her little Barbie dolls or something. So I'll usually ask her if she wants them before I put them in the trash. And then when I save them, I keep them all together. I have drawers that I keep all my yarns in, and I have one drawer that is for all my gauge swatches. So this is just a stack that I grabbed out of there because the drawer almost is full. Every once in a while I will go in the drawer and I'll get rid of some swatches. Like I can see right here, these are the same. So I'll just go ahead and toss that one right now because I don't need to keep it since it's the same. I haven't done a lot of repurposing of the gauge swatches. One thing I did do that was just kind of on a whim is this. I have a dresser in my living room where I keep some of my yarns, and this just sits out as decoration. This just happens to be a frame that I found in my house. The yarn in here, it's not a gauge swatch, but it is a sample of some yarn that I worked up, so I just stuck it in there, and it's a free piece of artwork that I can keep out. So the reason that I like to keep my gauge swatches, it's not so that I can see what my gauge was later on for a different project. Because somebody commented on Facebook that they don't keep their gauge swatches because later their gauge might not be the same, so it's really irrelevant to them. And I completely agree. The reason that I keep these is because if I want to work a project later, or for me as a designer, if I'm looking for a yarn for a new design, I can easily come into my stack and say, oh, that would be so cool for an idea that I have. I might as well use this. So it's really just a reference of yarns, not so much a reference for gauge swatches. Because if you look at your yarn on the skein or on the hank, it doesn't look the same as when it's worked up in stitches. So I hope that answers your question about what you can do with your gauge swatches once you're done with a project. If you happen to have a question about crocheting or knitting or just yarn in general, please post it to my Facebook page or to my YouTube channel or my blog. If I choose to use your question for this Help a Fan Out series, I will gift you one free pattern of your choice from my shop on Ravelry. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.